Hey everyone, this is part 1 of my Avidemux video tutorial. It's going to focus in on how to take your recorded TV shows, over-the-air programming you've recorded, and cut out the commercials, make a MTS file to burn to DVD or just to show on your entertainment PC. Then in later parts I'll get into encoding, because those files could be for an hour program 4.5 gigs in size, and the encoding part tells you how to reduce it down to 300 meg to stream on your cloud or a network storage device for later viewing of your favorite shows. So this is an editor. This is Avidemux 2.5.6. There's newer versions, but this one's I learned on first, so I'm more used to it. It's more stable. I've had run-ins with the newer ones that don't work quite as well as this one. First of all, when you open up, and I have already opened up an MPEG file here, MTS file, first you'll need to sync the audio. Basically, you'll go to your programming anywhere you can see someone talking, make sure it syncs up. You would do that by just playing it. You'll need a fast computer for the 1080p. I recommend a i3 or higher. It just is able to sync it in real time. I've got this computer that I'm using right now is a dual core, and it's a little choppy. Not so good to sync the audio. So you would just put a minus whatever, start at minus 200 and go from there. Every program's different, has a different lag time or latency. So you're just going to have to go at 100 milliseconds or increments until the audio looks good to you, and leave that. And the MPEG is like a series of pictures. So they're very easy to edit out the commercials. Like I said, those file size are really big, but you can cut out the commercials, and this will only take a matter of minutes or less to compile all these pictures to a new MPEG. So that's how this is so easy to edit. If you were to have something encoded, it takes a lot longer. It could take an hour. But just to edit an MPEG, which I prefer because it's so quick, I only use MTS or MPEG files. So if you have an over-the-air unit, converter box, make sure it says it records the original format, MPEG or MTS. Okay, like I said, these are, just think of an MPEG as individual pictures lined up. The very first, once you sync the video, you're going to have the first part of your program just junk, because usually you start it up a couple minutes before your program starts. So let's use this figure up here. The selectors are A and B. That's the first part and the second part. You have what frame you're on, the total frames, the time stamp you're in, and what frame type you're on. Now this is important because the very beginning of your MPEG must be an iframe. So we're going to cut out some of this junk, and so we have to find the first iframe that's part of your show. So we would just advance page up or page down if you're using this version. And page up, it goes really fast. So you would kind of get to where you want to be, use the finer controls, go iframe to iframe. Okay, here's an iframe, and this just jumps to the different iframe. That's the up and down. The arrows left and right are for the individual, as you can see down on the bottom. In the frame, I'm advancing at one frame by time. I'm still on P frame 4. Advance, advance, advance. There, iframe. So let's go back. Okay. So we find the first iframe that is part of your show you want to show, and you'd hit the B. So let's use the icons down here and hit B. As you can see, it selected everything from this backwards. Now, since we're on an iframe, let's say this is the iframe that we see, obviously. Anything when we hit the B is from this point back. So this iframe will not be affected. The only thing it's selecting is anything behind this iframe. And that's exactly what we want. We want everything cut. That will be your first cut. And as you notice, the total frames are 1518, and we're on frame 36. So we'll go and cut that. So the frames change from that to 1482. So it cut out that many frames and started on 0 from your iframe here. So this becomes your first iframe, and you want to leave that alone. So you want to advance until you find the first commercial, preferably on an iframe. And for your first cuts, always find the next iframe and hit the B. Now, if you want to get a little trickier, you can inch it back to a low P frame if you still want to capture some of your programming that's left in here. Sometimes it'll show like a second of the show before the iframe appears. That happens more on standard definition than the high definition, because the ViewTV, some of the like the CW shows, they're 60 frames a second. So, but in any case, you can go back to a low number P frame, and using this bottom one, actually hit the B. Or let me back up here. When you find, let's say this is the A and B, let's say this is the section of your commercial. So you can cut the end part, just about wherever you want. B frames, P frames, anywhere, practically. Because the iframe, when it decodes, the P frame could take a little bit from the iframe, the source material, to create a compressed P frame or a highly compressed B frame. But I think when they're recorded, they're all decoded, and they're all pretty much solid frames. You know, it has all the information in them. But that's not what happens when they're first broadcast. So that's why I'm telling you this method. You can just start the A. Let's say this is the very last frame. This B frame is what you want to keep, and everything, this first P frame and beyond, you don't need. So you'd hit the A. Then you would go forward and find the first low number P frame. Actually, you'd find the first iframe. And then if you saw that you wanted a little bit of this content, the PBB, if you still wanted that, you can't. And if it's a low P frame number, like it'll have a little number here. If it's like a 0 P frame 02, that's the higher. I'm not sure if it'll take or not. You'll just have to do some experiments. But if you want to be sure, just cut up to the iframe in this example. But you can cut out the commercials, and if it's a low number P frame. So let's assume we did this. We just cut out these 3 frames here. That is a commercial, and left the P frame up to the iframe. But most likely, when you first go, you're going to just want to, in this top example, just go to a P frame, hit the A, find the next iframe, and hit the B. And then just hit cut, and that cuts out your commercial. And then you'd keep on doing that until you reached, let's say this frame is the end, or close to the end, and then you just, let's say it faded out, or it had credits, and just the end of the credits is this B frame. Then you just hit, let's say you wanted to keep this B frame right here, you'd hit A, and then just cut, because it'll select everything to the very end, and hit cut. And that's basically all your editing is involved with. Cutting out the commercials, make sure it flows, make sure you've got the iframes. If you want to chance it later, sneak back to the P frames to get a little bit more of that content. But check your work once you're done. So that is it for cutting. To save your work, you would probably just want to put some settings in here. Just select Xvid and MP3 just to have something, and probably AVI. I do that so when you save project as, and I recommend you do this, it will save all your cuts. So you don't, if you mess up somehow, you won't have to redo your cuts. The reason why is if you leave these just a copy, it'll crash your system. But if you run it again, it'll say crash info, and it'll basically recover all the edits you did, but I don't like to see it crash. So these are the settings that you will make your new MPEG. You'll have a audio shift. Make sure that's correct. And these are the settings I want you to put in. Copy, and MPEG TS, parentheses A+V. So this is just the raw video. We're not encoding at this point. So you go and save video, and then just place it right next to the source material and name it something different, like the program that you recorded. And it should only take a couple minutes or less than that to make a full MPEG of the full quality. It'll probably be around 2.5 to 3.5 gigs. That's why you need a entertainment PC. If you try to use like a entertainment stick, or an Android stick, I'm sorry, or some kind of streaming device, these files are going to be way too big. So it's going to have to be on a computer or an entertainment PC. And so it only takes a few minutes. Let me go ahead and hit save. Show you we'll just put test. I just want to show you this part because a little screen comes up. It'll be real fast, but it shows you the process you're making, the percent bar, and you can pause this video and go back to see what it looks like. But it just gives you an overall file size and process. Okay, we've made the MPEG. So you're ready to take this and stream it or burn it to DVD. If you put it on a network storage device, it'll be way too big to stream. So let's go into some of the specifics. Let's say this is the first part of your video. You're going to go back frame by frame until you hit something you don't like. Let's say this. So you inch it one click at a time. Okay, this is fine, but it's not an iframe. So let's advance it a couple more. Still P frame, till we, there's the iframe. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about editing. So at this point we can hit the B, and I use the key to do that, the bracket, and it selected it. And that's basically how you're going to copy or cut out certain things. If you want to check your work here, you can hit the A. This will have where your iframe is, the very beginning of your cut, to the B. So just in case you want to check that out. There's fine controls here. You can kind of inch it. I don't use that. I use the keys. Volume. So that's basically it. That's basically the editor. Of course, with your bigger programs, you can zoom. So if you got a 1080p and it goes out of your screen because it's so big, some of them are 1080p. They're really, I mean, usually people don't have the computer screen that big to view it all, so that gives you a chance to, look at your whole scene. So I think I went through the controls. This is just the very simple basic part of this tutorial. Let me get into some of the advantages of saving a program like this to a smaller file. Now, parts 2 and beyond are going to be encoding XVID and advanced video codec. So if you want to advance to those videos, I should have a link down at the bottom to go right into part B, or actually part 2 and beyond. But this just gives you a little preview if you're curious. There's a lot of settings that once you set, you can save. Like if you have a certain type of show like The Flash or whatever on the CW, you can just name it, have a preset name and maybe a little description of what it is, and you don't have to fill in all these settings. Once you get these set, and I'll go through all of them, it's just a point of just setting whatever show, and all the settings appear. Grayscale and colored, it's all preset. I'll go into filters, how to resize your the end result to a different file size, if there's any interlaced frames, any noise, I'll go through some of that. Audio, I'll go into audio, how to if you have multiple audio, you're going to have to select stereo, and that's part of the audio shift is also part of that. But in your main track, some videos will have multiple audios, 3 or 4, so you're going to just have to pick one, and most likely you're going to have to pick stereo. If this is just depending on your system, if you have a sophisticated sound system, you might want to just leave it as is and just put no change. But usually I'm streaming on an entertainment PC, and stereo is just fine. I don't need all that extra audio. Then of course I would pick the MP4, or actually AVI, I'm sorry, since this is XVID. And I'll go into all the settings, all the filters. Also, the most, probably the most one people would want to use, I use this all the time, is the advanced video codec. This is massive, a lot of settings. I've got a whole little book on all the settings and what they do, the descriptions that I've pulled off the internet, and it'll be pretty painless. I've had to work on this for hours and hours and days to figure out what all these are. But what I've done is I've just made a couple presets, and it changes all the presets to how I want it for that particular show. And then from there, I just change the different filters to resize, that sort of thing, to get the colors to either make it dark, a little darker, and then of course the noise filters, which help processing. So that's a little overview of the next videos I'm going to make. But for right now, this will just take your raw MPEGs so you can watch it. That was the whole purpose of this video. The next video will be to save this content to a smaller file size. Now, if you just want to make these MPEGs and keep them, I suggest you do so, because you're going to want to take this maybe a little slower. So you might have several shows you want to keep and keep the recordings. I know it's going to be a hassle to keep all that file size, or it's going to use up a lot of file size for those MPEGs. But as soon as you get up to speed with encoding, it's going to go real quick. Once you have everything set up, all you'll have to do is just select the MPEG, put in, configure what show it is, hit OK, do some filters, and then go to save file. And on an i3 computer, you'll be able to chunk this within an hour. You're done. You're ready to put it on a network storage device, and you'll have it for as long as you have your file. Lot of I go back and watch shows every once in a while, and it's great just to have these smaller files. It's like watching the original. So stay tuned for the part 2. It's gonna get pretty complicated, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. This is just an overview of how to get started. Just if you're a viewer, just want the good quality to view, and throw it away. Some programs, that's all I do. Half my programs, I just use this tutorial I just taught you just to get out the commercials, save it to an entertainment PC, and then I delete it. Because it only takes about 10 minutes to do this whole process, and I've got time to do it. So it's pretty easy to learn. Once you do it a while, it'll become second nature. So stay tuned for the part 2. I don't know when I'll upload it, but I'll have hopefully a link to this program, to the part B or part 2 and beyond. I should have it. I'll update this video, so just come back to here. Come back to the my channel and look for the update. So I hope this helped. Stay tuned for more videos.